welcome everybody. All right, so this is English 250, Crime in Literature. I'm Ann Summers. I'm a lecturer in the English department. I'll be your instructor for the next 8 weeks of the summer class. Excited to get to know you all, to hear your ideas, read your work, and dig into the really interesting text that we have picked out for this semester. All right, so today all I'm going to do is try to give you some information about the basic structure of the course, the expectations, and give you a little preview of what the Noodle units will look like so that you know what you have to do for when we're coming back for really our first content-based discussion, which will be later in the week. All right, so if you're looking at your Noodle page, the very first thing that you want to do is read the syllabus. So for our online class, we won't be going over it piece by piece as you might do in person, so it's really important that you read it carefully. Also, since a lot of this course will go on in the discussion forums, I've given you this separate document here which outlines all the information you need to know about those discussion posts, when they're due, what I'm looking for, what you should aim to include in terms of the content of the posts, so that you can get the grade that you want on those posts. All right. Now, if we move down, this is what a general week will look like in the class. So we've got our first one up. I'll give you a little overview of some of the big concepts we'll be discussing, and then you'll have resources and activities. I have the class organized around Mondays and Thursdays, and you'll know this from after you read the syllabus. So you'll have discussion posts or assignments due every Monday and every Thursday. Occasionally you might have other things due at other days, right? But in general, the main thing you want to keep in mind for organizing yourself for the course is that it's going to be Mondays and Thursdays. And the reason that I did it that way is I'm assuming that a lot of you are probably working, and I figured it might be helpful if we had most of our work due during the week so that you could still feel like you had a weekend and you weren't having to post Saturday night or Sunday night. So some good structure in our quarantine lives, I know, might be helpful. So I'm hoping it's useful to you to kind of have everything due in a regular work week time frame so that you can, maybe be a little freer on your weekends. All right, so remember, so for today, if we're looking at our resources, you're going to read the syllabus carefully. Any questions that you have about the syllabus, maybe you're not sure what the posts are supposed to be like, maybe you're not sure what assignments are going to go into your grade, or you're not sure what books to buy, all those questions you want to post here. So in the instructor office forum. This is true throughout the course. If you ever have questions that you think other people will benefit from hearing the answer to, post them in instructor office. If you have questions that are specific to you, just email them to me, right? And then all of the information about my office hours, my email, my contact stuff is all in the syllabus as well. All right, so if we're back down here, so now we've talked about these two documents, then we have some recommended resources. This is going to be true a lot throughout the semester. I will post things for you with the tag either recommended or optional, meaning that you don't have to view them, but you probably should, right? So maybe it's something if you have a particular busy week, you're not going to check them out, you're going to check them out later, or maybe you're going to focus on the materials for the things that you want to write about for your project or that you find particularly interesting. But just make sure that you're differentiating between what you have to do, which are going to be, some of the lecture materials, the required readings, and the discussion posts and the assignments listed in the syllabus, and then what's recommended, which will be extra information for those of you who want to learn more, who are interested in something, or who want to examine the topic in more depth. So these recommended resources are kind of helping refresh you in terms of ideas for succeeding in an online environment, but also particularly for literary analysis. So there's some stuff about close reading, which you'll hear me talk about a lot. It's basically the type of interpretation we're aiming to do in the class, where you're paying attention to not only what's going on in terms of the plot in a book, but also the way that the text is written, right? And the larger significance of the formal aspects of the text. So that's when you bring in references to literary devices, to organization, to narration, to structure, etc. There's also some links to academic journals on the topic and a link to a text that will help you figure out how to be successful when using e-text. If you're reading things online and you tend to zone out or you can't remember what you read, there's a text in there that will be useful to you. Okay, there's also here some additional information on this topic here, right? Digging into the concepts of justice and knowledge and how that relates to the genres that we're going to be examining this semester. Now, in terms of what you need to do for today's class, you're going to head into this discussion forum and you're going to, the first prompt is about introducing yourself, and the second one is about thinking about your relationship to this topic of mystery or crime fiction at this moment. And then we're going to be able to see how it evolves throughout the class. So you're going to do the introduction, you're going to read the syllabus, read the guidelines for the posts, maybe read this extra stuff, and then you'll be done for today. Then we're going to come back on Thursday, right? So following that schedule that I discussed. At that point, we're going to have our first actual required readings. So for whenever you want to know what readings we're doing for the class, you're going to click into this document here. This is a schedule broken down by week of everything we're going to be reading. So for Thursday's class, you're going to be reading 2 chapters from the Cambridge Companion to Crime Fiction and 2 short stories. So it is kind of a heavy reading load for Thursday. So make sure that you give yourself enough time, maybe try to break it up from now until then so that you don't have to read it all at once. So you're going to be kind of figuring out about the rise of detective fiction or crime fiction in the middle to the late 19th century in these chapters here, and then you're going to be reading 2 classic examples. So the Murders on Rue Morgue by Poe is considered the first detective fiction story, and then Doyle, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, is the person who kind of made it even more famous, right? So we'll be talking about those texts on Thursday. Again, you'll see here a little optional tag, right? So if anyone has seen the BBC adaptation of Sherlock or wants to create a larger connection for the discussions, or maybe eventually for your writing, where you get to connect Doyle the text versus a modern adaptation, that's a really good one. So that's definitely, I'll give you recommendations like that sometimes of things that you can do beyond the text of the course. But again, it's recommended, but certainly not required. All right, so if we go back, then remember, so you're going to do those readings for Thursday. Again, here I'm giving you some extra material, and then you're going to come back and you're going to discuss on Thursday as well. So all of these posts are going to be due before midnight on the respective day, but remember that once you've read these guidelines, you'll know that you are not only posting an original response, but you're responding to other people. So if everybody leaves their post until 11:30 at night, everyone's going to be frantically trying to respond. So it's a good idea to do it sort of in small pieces over time. For the introductory discussion, you don't have to reply to anybody, but for discussion number 1, that's when that all starts. So make sure that you're trying to post a little bit early if you can. And then as we move forward, remember, if you want to see what's coming your way in terms of readings, you can check this out here to see the schedule. And then the final thing that I'll mention is just the books that you need to order. So they are listed on the bookstore website for Norwich, but they also would be available on Amazon. If you want to get Kindle versions, try to just, well, either if you're getting, paper copies or e-versions, try to get the version that I have recommended in terms of the publisher so that we can all have the same page numbers, because that'll keep things easier. But if you do have an e-text, sometimes the page numbers don't work out anyway, so just beware that if you choose to use digital copies, you might run into some issues with juggling the page numbers. It's not like it can't be done, it just requires a little bit of work sometimes to figure out, if I'm referring to a particular passage and you have a different version, trying to do a little bit of work to figure out where it is. Okay, so the books that we need. So the novel we'll be reading first, so we'll start this next week. So this one you want to try to get as soon as you can if you don't have it already, is Hammett's The Maltese Falcon. Then we will be reading one of the first examples of true crime, which is Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. And then finally we will be reading a female detective novel, Indemnity Only by Sarah Paretsky. So in addition to that, we'll obviously be reading a lot of short stories, which I will post for you here, right, in that required readings link. But those are the 3 novels that we'll be focusing on. Okay, all right, so I think that's all I wanted to say for an intro, but again, I'm looking forward to discussing these texts with you. I think we have a really interesting topic for our course picked out, and it's something that's gonna relate to your own experiences, your own lives, right? Things that you watch on TV, movies that you watch. podcasts that you listen to, right? Since true crime podcasts are really a big thing. So don't be afraid to make those kinds of connections. It doesn't have to be solely literary, right? We're dealing with something that's kind of a pop culture phenomenon, trying to get inside the mind of a criminal, get inside the mind of maybe a murderer, serial killer, etc., or a detective, and figure out what that tells us about larger societal values, questions about psychology, questions about the relationship between societies and those who don't exactly fit in, right, to the margins. So we have a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to hear everyone's ideas. All right, thanks everybody. So I'll see you in the introductory discussion, and then I will see you back here on Thursday to talk about Poe and Doyle.